See. Hello, good morning, Miami.
Good morning, everybody.
Not a bad turnout for a bear market. So let's warm things up a bit before we get started. Let's have some fun. So I'm going to say Bitcoin. You guys say nation-state adoption. Ready? Bitcoin. Nation-state adoption. All right, let's do one more. I'll say Indonesia. You guys say needs Bitcoin. Ready? Indonesia. Needs Bitcoin. Do you believe them?
I believe them.
All right.
100%.
All right. So, Governor Kamil, let's first start with the question everyone wants to know. How did you first hear about Bitcoin and what got you interested in Bitcoin?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Ridwan Kamil. I'm currently a leader for 50 million people in Indonesia. 5 to 6 years ago, I learned about Bitcoin. It's part what I call digital disruption. It's a form of digital currency that can be used as a form of payment outside the control of individual institution, and I think it's very democratic. Yeah, but we need to learn more because as a leader, I need to understand 100% because I'm a decision maker. Once the leader understands, I can translate it into policies that benefit public interest. Yeah, because there are three types of leader when responding to digital disruption. Number one, leader that doesn't understand or acknowledge the digital disruption. Second one, understand the digital disruption but does nothing. I'm the third one, understand the digital disruption that I adjust, adapt the disruption to a public policy. For example, I fight corruption using artificial intelligence. I'm using blockchain technology for my coffee business export. So if you drink coffee in Starbucks, you can learn and tracing back your coffee back to the plantation owner, for example. I'm using IoT to feed the fish, to feed the chicken. So this digital disruption in the hands of leader like me will benefit the future public interest. So that's how I learned that Bitcoin also is the future. Today is not yet there as a form of transaction in daily basis, but it's getting there to find the balance. So I'm here also to learn from you all what is the future for us.
All right. So maybe you can tell the audience, in case they don't know, what is your job like being a governor? It's one of the most populous regions. And what's your proudest achievement to date?
My biggest achievement, I have 20.2 million followers in my Instagram account.
And you're going to teach them about Bitcoin.
You can add at Ridwan Kamil. I'm responsible to 50 million lives of my people. I used to be an architect, a practicing architect. I graduated from UC Berkeley years ago. I was a city mayor of Bandung, 2.5 million, and now a governor of 50 million. And next year is national election. I'm top 4 for presidential candidate like Mr. Kennedy, so who knows? Finger crossed. So that's basically my background, yeah.
Okay. So Indonesia is an energy-rich country, which could be a major player in the Bitcoin mining space. You have the second most geothermal potential in the world, and there are more than 800 rivers with hydropower. Now, as Bitcoin allows for the transformation of money into energy, or energy into money, Bitcoin could be very transformative for Indonesia, especially for mining Bitcoin. What are your thoughts there?
Before I answer to this very important question, I would like to give the audience the optimistic statistic, okay? Indonesia, almost 300 million people. Currently number 16 in G20 groups, okay? Our economy is always above 5% per year. So if we keep our economy 5% the next 20 years, my country, Indonesia, could be the number 4 biggest economy in the world. After China, India, and US, it will be Indonesia. We are now number 7 of Bitcoin adoption in the world. So you can imagine, yeah, from 200 countries, Bitcoin adoption, Indonesia number 7. And the fastest growing investor of Bitcoins. We have like 7 million investor for mutual fund, 8 million investor for stocks, and 12 million for crypto investor. Out of 12 million, 70% are Bitcoin investor. So, and every year we grow 500,000 new investor. So you see, I'm coming from a country of the 7 biggest Bitcoin adoption. So you need more leaders, political leaders like me to understand, and you know, in the future we could be the heaven for a Bitcoin investor. And this is the best part. We have the biggest reserve of renewable energy in the world. If you combine our solar, flowing waters, combining with wind and geothermal, because Indonesia has the biggest active volcano in the world, yeah, we will produce 400 gigawatts of power. 300 million of our population is only consuming half. So in the future, we have extra 200 gigawatts of power of renewable energy. And that's where the Bitcoin minings come to play. That's why I would like to come here to invite you to build our infrastructure of renewable energy in any form, because it's benefiting the jobs to my people. Imagining you bring these miners to any villages that have flowing water, hot solar, for example, and brings also the advancement of technology, educating my people about the future of this Bitcoin. Yeah. So I think 200 gigawatts potential renewable energy is up for grabs. So hopefully, because government money is not enough. Yeah. As a governor, I have a budget only 17% to finance everything happening in my region. So I need the private sector. I need people who understand this concept of better world without too much carbon. Yeah, because Indonesia committed 2050 to be net zero. Current speed of going net zero is too slow because relying too much on government money in intervention. But if Bitcoin miners come with infrastructure of renewable energy projects, we could speed more and creating less carbon lifestyle or net zero society in the near future.
So there's a big opportunity. Let's let them give you some applause.
Thank you.
So basically what you're saying is you see a big opportunity for Indonesia because you have China that's cracked down on Bitcoin mining, and in the US, you know, they're pushing forward potential legislation like a 30% tax. But you're open to bringing in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining to Indonesia. Is that right?
Yes, I think everybody's scared about disruption, basically. If you don't have knowledge how to respond disruption, usually you have very protective attitude against disruption. I'm very open-minded leaders. I'm a very pro-business leader. But again, I need to balance between these digital revolutions, also the public interest that I have to protect, right? For example, Bitcoin is a solution, in my opinion, to unbankable part of my society. 40% of my people are unbankable. So traditional financial institution is not a solution. So I think this is something I would like to share, and having open-minded mindset. Then after this, I learn from all of you. When I return to my country, I make a series of decisions and creating a balance situation for our future economy and financial freedom also. And so many new investors of Bitcoin, including one of the investors are here, which is my wife. Where is my wife? Somewhere. It's very supportive of Bitcoin.
So let's talk a bit about how to actually get Bitcoin companies, Bitcoin mining companies to go to Indonesia. There's recently an omnibus law that was passed that would allow for energy projects above 1 megawatt to be 100% funded by foreign investors. So that could be a big draw for people to go to Indonesia. What would you do in addition to that, or do you want to comment on that, on its ability to attract companies to Indonesia? Or are there additional laws that you see that could benefit companies to go there?
Yeah, as a leader, I'm also a lawmaker. Yeah, we recently just passed what we call omnibus law. It's a super law by passing like maybe 200 existing redundant law. Yeah, this omnibus law also gives opportunities for you to invest to build at least 1 megawatts or 10 megawatts of renewable energy 100% funded by private sector. So I'm offering you, come to Indonesia, let's tap this biggest reserve of renewable energy dedicated to the mining business of Bitcoin, because also I think the way we work, Bitcoin mining is helping also to create an affordable price of energy, because you can take the excess power during the peak of the power supply, and during the downtime you can you can shut down during the peak time, and you can resume the activity during the downtime. So I think this is creating a very balanced for creating affordable price of power. So hopefully by this perspective, we will have this omnibus law creating a massive interest from all of you to come to Indonesia and creating much renewable power for your mining business. And I think in the current state, I will have the projects in next couple of months from American company opening this renewable power for mining business, because I think Bitcoin mining is borderless. Yeah, you can do it anywhere in the world to your business. Great. But also, Samson, I'm here as a country leader. I want you to teach me or give me a lesson. What did you do in El Salvador? I heard you have a government bond using Bitcoin. So what's the update and what lesson learned that I can learn from your initiative?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to take into account the game theory. So as Indonesia is interested to attract Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin industry, there is a rush, right? The first ones that adopt Bitcoin in a meaningful way will be the countries that have a big advantage. And this advantage could help to propel you into the top 4 producing countries in the world. But the Bitcoin bonds, I think it's an interesting design. So you're an architect. I'm also an architect of the Bitcoin bonds. But it's basically a financial instrument that takes half of the funds raised. So for example, $1 billion bond, you'll take half of it to buy Bitcoin, half of it to go into a revenue-generating activity to cover the coupon on the bond. And in the case of El Salvador, they have volcano bonds, and that is Bitcoin mining with geothermal energy. So the bond can finance a lot of the build-out of new energy infrastructure, which is something that you're interested in, except that you have a lot of other types of energy. So there have been talks with other governments, Ecuador and Costa Rica, about creating hydro bonds, which would be tapping into hydropower. And that's something that you could do as well. So Indonesia could have a volcano bond, hydro bonds, and other bonds too. But I think it's an interesting way to leverage Bitcoin's price appreciation. So Bitcoin appreciates roughly 60% a year median. And by 2023, that's very conservative too. By 2023, Bitcoin should be about 2.9 or 3 million. So that's a 10-year period, and the bonds would be a 10-year bond structure, and that would get you to through two halving events. So I think it's interesting, and if you're interested, we can chat more, and I'm happy to design one for Indonesia.
Yeah, I think anything to speed up the development of my country, I would be very interested, because as I said, if you rely 100% to government intervention, government money will never enough. So we need to create some sort of other form of financial setup to build the infrastructure. So I think this government bond of Bitcoin is very, very interesting. I would like to learn. You know, West Java, my province, is having the biggest solar project in ASEAN. Yeah, we build it on the water, floating on the water. We are doing it with Masdar, it's Abu Dhabi company, because solar projects is better 0 degrees, so floating on the water is the best. So if you come to my region, you will see lakes with full of solar farming. And we are coming from tropical country, so solar is very strong, right? So I think, again, 7 biggest Bitcoin adoption with full reserve of energy, renewable energy. And also we have a Bitcoin conference in October in Bali. So if you would like to see the island of Bali where Julia Roberts play for Eat, Pray and Love, come to Bali, let's discuss in more detail about our Bitcoin collaborations. Yeah.
So do you see Bitcoin being a booster for tourism? So many countries have their little Bitcoin enclaves. So you have Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador and Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica, and there's numerous ones. Do you think having some sort of Bitcoin place in Indonesia could be a benefit? And is tourism top of mind for you? Seems like it is.
Yes, I think I'm learning and adopting wherever I can make a good decision to my people. I think the best one in my imagination is the financial inclusivity. Yeah, imagine 50 million people. I still have a challenge of 40% unbankable. So this micro payment, because you know, without the third-party involvement, faster transactions, right? Lower fee, because you don't have to pay the third party. You can just install, connect to the Bitcoin ecosystem right away, and making a transfer easier, cross-border international transaction also faster. With a Lightning project, for example, it will help my 40% of my people. That's my interest as a leader also. So micro SME project might benefit from Bitcoin transaction, maybe experimental in one region, so Bitcoin-friendly tourism, for example, is something I would like to learn. At the end, we have to benefit. But as a government, you have to understand that we still have in the transition mode. I remember during the arrival of Uber, yeah, the Uber projects business already happening on the street, but regulation like takes 4 years in my country to regulate, to have a fair trade of this online transportation. Yeah, so that's what's happening also with Bitcoins. It's already happening with our 12 million investor. So currently, I have a good news. As we speak, we are now preparing for trading exchange of Bitcoin in Indonesia. So hopefully it will take place soon as possible. And this is, we get the balance, yeah. So combination of regulation, experimenting in tourism area, and benefiting this micro business of my people. This is something I would like to see in concrete implementation in the next coming 2 or 3 years time.
Okay, so You're interested in bringing people with Bitcoin tourism. That's great. So the interesting thing is, in Indonesia, Bitcoin payments are actually prohibited. And there is a parallel here. So there was a large Bitcoin crackdown over time in China, and it first started as a payments ban. So back in the day, I used to run an exchange, but you're first prohibited from payments, so you couldn't use Bitcoin as payments. And then came the shutdown of the exchanges, and then came crackdown on the mining industry. But you're welcoming mining, and I think exchanges can operate, but do you think there needs to be a shift in thinking about Bitcoin as a payment mechanism? Because it's difficult to bank the unbanked. Well, you can bank them, but if they can't pay with Bitcoin, it would be a problem.
I'm a type of leader that not always against the disruption. I'm the type of leader who try to understand what is the disruption and what can I do to use this disruption, as I said, to benefit my public. As I said before, I'm the first governor using AI to fight corruptions. I'm using the blockchain, the first one, to make my coffee export business a transparent and fair trade process. I'm using the IoT. Mobile phone is no longer a means of communication. In rural area, I'm using mobile phone as a means of production. You press the mobile phone, the food fish projected to the fish pond, for example. We catch the ocean fish using the satellite apps called Fish Finder. So again, it just needs a time to be ready for Bitcoin as a form of payment. Currently, digital payment in Indonesia is everywhere. I'm paying everything with my e-wallet, but not yet to Bitcoin. But it takes time to be ready. Yeah. As long as, one, you have a strong regulatory framework. Second, you have a scheme for protection for any potential risk, for example, right? And the third, you still manage to have what we call a balance between government control and individual control to your own transaction. So I think hopefully in the next coming years, the payment using Bitcoin will be in place. Again, please come to Indonesia, 7th biggest Bitcoin adoption. Come to Bali in October, let's discuss more detail. And let's see more infrastructure of renewable energy. At the end of the day, we have a better world to live in, less carbon, better sustainable future, and digital democratic Bitcoin will be a new thing and a normal thing in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have 30 seconds left. What are your thoughts, very briefly, on Bitcoin as a reserve asset for the country? Indonesia has gold. Does it make sense for Indonesia to have Bitcoin?
In the new generation, they buy gold, they buy stocks, and now they are buying Bitcoin as a reserve for individual. But for a country, it's a bit complicated. Country like us, we have gold reserve, and many form of reserve, but not yet the Bitcoin reserve. But I think, as I said, everything takes time. Disruption takes time to be understood. So hopefully, see you in Indonesia, a Bitcoin heaven in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Governor Ridwan Kamil. Let's go.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at Bitcoin Magazine. We're here again at the Bitcoin Magazine live desk presented by Marathon. Quick apology to the viewers out there. Our live stream was abruptly cut on YouTube, ironically, during a conversation about censorship on YouTube. We're fixing the problems, and, of course, live on Rumble. Joined now by a new round of special guests. To my left, Matthew Pines, Director of Security and Intelligence at Krebs Stamos. To his left, Jason Mayer, author of A Progressive's Case for Bitcoin. And last but not least, Dan, host of Blue Collar Bitcoin. We just heard from governor of Indonesia, who's open about Bitcoin, wants to court Bitcoin mining. We're about to hear on the main stage a fireside chat with Cynthia Lummis, senator from Wyoming. Want to talk about the war in Washington over Bitcoin. What's at stake in this conversation, Matt?
So, a lot's at stake. We've seen some progress and then 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And I think Cynthia Lummis is a champion for Bitcoin in D.C., and she's focused on getting proper legislation across the line, and she's working in a bipartisan fashion. But I think there's lots of other issues happening inside D.C. that have sort of pushed Bitcoin and stablecoins and sort of those sorts of issues to the back burner. They got to get, the debt ceiling passed. But I think we're going to be heading into a political season in the next few months where getting Bitcoin onto the agenda is an important issue, and I think supporting Cynthia Lummis' efforts will be an important thing to do.
Jason, I want to turn to you. Bitcoin legislation stalled, introduced last June. Your take on what we're going to hear in this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's very critical that the conversation continue. Obviously, people here know that Bitcoin is probably the most important issue that we could be talking about. In Washington, they're put it on the back burner. I think that it's critical for us to have incentivized Democratic politicians to engage in the conversation. I think Cynthia Lummis has done a good job of coordinating with Kristen Gillibrand in a bipartisan fashion, but there's too many Democrats who aren't really engaging in the conversation. So we're very positive about what we're going to see later today at the conference, and hopefully we can just incentivize by talking to the voters the politicians that actually need to start talking about this as solutions for everybody.
Well, that's word bipartisanship. Dan, want to throw it over to you. What's bringing people on the red and blue aisles together over this issue?
Yeah, I think this topic is incredibly important because whether you're too cool for it or not, bipartisanship matters. Narratives matter, stories matter to move this technology forward, at least in the short and medium term. And there's a lot of reasons, Jason, it's great that you're up here, that Bitcoin appeals to both the right, which we've been more accustomed to, but also the left. Just technological progress in general. We don't want to break our leg in the beginning of an incredibly important race towards innovation, and also just the broader financial inclusion implications of Bitcoin, which are inherently and naturally progressive. So I'm excited to hear Senator Lummis talk about Bitcoin bipartisanship, how we bring in both sides here, because I do think that that is key to winning the narrative war and winning hearts and minds for a technology that is paramount at this date and time.
Well, throwing it back to the main stage, of course, we're hear later from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who will be making his campaign debut here. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, on stage, an independent. Smash that like button on YouTube. Give us a rumble on Rumble. We're sending it back to the main stage now for a fireside chat with Cynthia Lummis.